tech today.
Okay, well, I guess one of the big stories, which I was a little involved in today, was it was published in the Times that some professors, a professor from Cornell that I actually interviewed on Clubhouse, and another one from Stanford, published a paper saying that carbon capture and sequestration for hydrogen is worse than not doing it. In other words, they said that actually that will create more emissions than it saves. I reviewed their pre-publication paper, and I disagree because they're just basically using old numbers. But still, it got a lot of coverage and started a broader discussion, I would say, on Twitter, me and them and others. Basically, um, they want to just uh, move from fossil fuels to renewables. That's their playbook. And Mark Jacobson is famous for saying we can move 100% of energy to renewables and you do it 100, 24/7, 365. And I, by the way, totally agree with him, and I totally agree we should do that. My point is we're not going to do that on time, and therefore we need as a backup carbon capture. And he and I guess Bob are basically against that idea and think so. Anyway, it's a very important tech issue whether we go and do that or not, because it's sort of like the future of civilization or not, and whether who's right and can we do it and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that kind of flared up today, and I was kind of spending a lot of time on that. But I don't have any other sort of mainstream
Dan, quick
stories except
question.
for yeah.
Just a quick question. Would plant-based, and this is out of sheer ignorance, plant-based proteins, and you know the new thing with everyone making investments into, for example, um, vegetable-based beef
Yeah, like
patties
Impossible
and
Burger
chicken.
and
Yeah.
Beyond Beef and
Right,
yeah.
exactly. This would count as impact for climate, right? This would be good
Yeah,
for the
because
climate.
cows, roughly speaking, cows emit as much as cars do. And then it's through a bunch of things, but deforestation. So you're cutting down the Amazon to grow soybeans to feed the cows. That's part of it. And also, cows burp methane, and methane over a 20-year period is 86 times as powerful as CO2. It does go away after a couple decades, but still, while it's in the atmosphere, it's quite powerful. And those things, plus a few others, make cows very powerful.
It's more the
Cows are about 10
methane gas, right?
times
Then
yeah,
methane.
methane. Well, not
Yeah.
methane and deforestation. Yeah, they're both of those. And
No,
cows are about 10 times worse than chicken. But
because
all meat is
the
has an
reason I'm
impact.
asking a question, the reason I'm asking the question is because today, just one of the biggest headlines that came out was Novozymes has a planned 2.2 billion dollar investment that's going towards plant-based protein investments that are coming up. So beginning with
Yes.
beef. So how
Yeah,
what
this
kind of effect
decade
would
will
that
be a
have?
lot of that, plus cell-based meats, right? Or fermentation, making food sort of the way we make beer, I guess. Kind of a
But that's going to have a
quick
bad
way to
effect
say it.
then,
And
right?
both those things are going to be
Because,
really big this decade. Yeah.
but then if you're leaving cows out there, for example, if you've got a growing population base of cows and animals such as, then that's bad for the climate. Is my thesis correct there?
No, if you replace beef with plant-based proteins, then you won't raise the cows and you won't have them contributing to climate change. And then the
Okay,
land that they're
understood.
grazing on or use for their soybeans and stuff could go back to reforestation and therefore actually even capture some CO2. We had a big discussion on this on Clubhouse last week on veganism, for example. It's a
I
big
got it.
issue for them.
But
Understood.
meaning to say,
Thank
if
you.
you just totally forget about meat, you don't even need the plant-based meat. You just eat your vegetables and fruits.
Yeah, there's ways to get protein from a lot of
So yeah,
things. Yeah.
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 Okay, I got a related headline. Chris Sacca just raised $800 million for investing in climate tech. He already was. I consider Chris a friend. I went to his 40th birthday party. Chris is brilliant. I speak incredibly highly of him. And he's a massive angel investor. He became very popular in America after he became one of the sharks on Shark Tank for a while. And yeah, he was doing lowercase capital. He started a VC fund called Lowercase Capital, he made billions of dollars, and then realized he wanted to, do something about the climate. So he started what's called Lower Carbon Capital, which is a separate fund aimed at reducing carbon and, kind of green tech. And he's been doing that for a couple of years. And then yesterday he tweeted out that he raised another 800 million for his Lower Carbon Capital. And I mentioned he's one of the friends I'm going to reach out to get funding for the bamboo project. And glad that
the bamboo project, Chris's bamboo project.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll talk to you about that sometime.
So, another 800 million. That's a lot of bamboo. So, I could buy a lot of bamboo seeds.
Might not be a good idea, by the way. We're warning. By the way, you're mentioning something that's actually one of the biggest, positive stories in climate, and that is that mainstream. Now he's doing a special climate fund, but it's reflecting the fact that mainstream finance is finally opening its eyes to both the risk, of course, of climate, but also the opportunity. And there's been so many stories about mainstream financial firms finally, moving into investing in the climate space, and that's really great news. And also, of course, divesting from fossil fuels has been the story for the last few years, but the investing part was delayed a little bit, and it's finally coming around. It's really exciting to see that.
Yeah, and
big difference.
One of the partners in his fund, Carbon Capital, is or called lower carbon capital, because his original fund was called lowercase capital, and this one's called Lower Carbon Capital, and it's him and his wife, Crystal, and then Clay Dumas. And Clay just did a podcast with what is that incubator out of Boulder called? Brad and David's incubator. Techstars just did an interview, a podcast very recently with Clay, where he talks about how it's been going with, since joining the fund. And Clay says, I listened to it yesterday, that he's been really blown away by the speed with which this is all coming together, all of the solutions that are coming out, and all the amount of hardworking teams and bright minds that are getting into the space. And yeah, I think what's going to happen is people who become economically stable enough, and this, I mean, how do I say this? I think the smartest minds in tech generally can get to a point where they're economically retirable, by the age of 30 or 40. And then rather than continue to work on making more millions, commit themselves to, this bigger problem that we all share. And I think that's going to happen, where basically all the smartest people on the planet are going into tech. They make a few million by the time they're 30, and then they're going to go into green tech. I think that's going to be the trend going forward. And they're going to need...
I think you're right. But it's also it's also a lot of fun, by the way. It's a great area. You learn new things, and it's a great feeling to know you're working on like one of the most important problems in the world, and that it affects everyone. And so and plus, if you look at the numbers, just the things that are measured in trillions of dollars, when you look at what has to change, right, very fast. So you realize the economic opportunity is also tremendous. But there's really it's fun. It's depressing to think about it sometimes, but you also get inspired to work harder, and it's been great working at it. I've learned so much.
Yeah, and then what else can I say about it? He and Chamath are, to me, two of the smartest folks in tech as well, and it's not a coincidence that they're doing two of the biggest green tech funds, and they both have billions to spend on green tech, and they're super sharp and super operationally oriented, and the most action prone folks. They really make shit happen. So I think it's just a matter of figuring. Yeah, they're committed to drawing down. Both of them are committed to drawing down CO2 levels. It's just a matter of figuring out the most optimal project to do so, and then hopefully it's a scalable project. Anyway, I'm starting to contemplate how to, all the different initiative possibilities. So anyway,
on top of that, Yes, on top of that, also there are certain discussions right now. You've seen since March in Europe, for example, you have ESG regulations on asset managers. If you claim, you need to show this. Now, honestly, it's punishing the ones wanting to do good, and it doesn't have an effect of those not doing it. And that's a discussion right now. You can see in several fronts, even with the UN, is to actually look at the negative footprint of investments overall, and to basically impose that on asset managers to tell you, basically, of that money, the AUM you manage and you invest, what is the CO2 footprint of what you do? And then that opens up a whole new gateway of much more big capital moving into the green tech space, or into carbon capture, or less carbon negative footprint. And I think that's the right way to do, where you start really measuring not only the ones doing good, but really overall what the footprint of investments are in general.
Yeah. Chris did on his tweet, where did it go? Now he's retweeting everybody that is congratulating him on the fund. A lot of our mutual friends. He had a good tweet, basically summarizing that he's not wasting any time trying to convince climate deniers. Just leave them alone. Let them watch Maury Povich all day at home. They're not part of the factors. Like, there's so many solutions out there that we just need the people that want to take action to just start taking more action, and that the markets will effectively dictate the movements of everything. But yeah, in Clay's podcast, he makes the point that there seems to be an accelerating transition into this space, and let's hope that's the case. Let's hope he's right. So I think there was one other green tech headline that I had. Oh shoot, I just buried it with a whole bunch of other tweets. Oh, there it was. Where'd it go? I just killed it. There's water cuts in the U.S. West. This is from AP News from Dr. Fran. It says, first water cuts in U.S. West supply to hammer Arizona farmers. A harvester rumbles through the fields in the early. This journalist missed their calling as a novelist and is turning this news story about climate change into their opportunity to write a novel, unfortunately. But it's about how basically Arizona is now impacted by California's water shortage, although it was never California's water to begin with. It was Colorado's that we sucked into California, and now they're impacted as well. So the drought is spreading, essentially, is kind of the short.
Yeah, the background on that for folks outside the U.S. is that the level of water in Lake Mead is dropping, and it's very, very close to this point. When it drops below that Arizona and New Mexico get severe water cutbacks, because basically California and some other states were there first. And when they wanted water from the dam, they said, okay, but here's the rules. And if it dropped below this thing, which no one thought would ever go that low, and now it's very, very close to hitting that mark. And that's what's about to happen, and going to make it very difficult for Arizona and New Mexico.
Yeah, this AP article phrases it as follows. It says the cutbacks in Colorado River supply next year will be a blow for agriculture in Arizona's top production area. Dairies largely rely on local farms for feed and will have to search further out for feed because the local farms aren't growing anything to feed the cows. So now the agriculture is going down. That impacts the dairy. The cuts are coming earlier than expected as the drought has intensified and reservoirs dipped to historic lows across the West. Scientists blame climate change for the warmer, more arid conditions. And standing next to a dry field, then this journalist can't help themselves but try and turn this into a little novel. Again, missing their calling as a novelist and becoming a journalist. That's unfortunate when novelists aren't able to make their living writing novels and feel like they have to force that on those of us trying to read news articles. But so into the top news stories at this very moment, the biggest one at this very moment, And again, a very happy Friday to everybody. August 13th. This is the biggest news story at the moment from Reuters. Reuters claims they have sources. The New York Times also jumping in on this one. That Apple employees have sent nearly 1,000 Slack messages on internal channels debating the company's plans to scan U.S. phones, iPads, and computers. So, boy, is this story about the child abuse imagery on, and this all kicked off a week ago when it Apple it was revealed Apple's going to start scanning their devices and the iCloud storage for in the photos for child abuse imagery in the next operating system, iOS 15, which everyone's going to download in about 2 weeks or update their devices. And also Mac OS Monterey, which is your laptop's operating system. So this kicked off a whole bunch of debate. And apparently that debate is now spreading inside of Apple. That's what this headline says, is that Reuters says they have sources inside Apple, meaning Apple team members, where I think the interesting thing is that we're learning now that Apple uses Slack internally. I didn't know that. So according to the headline, Apple employees have sent 800 messages through Slack, 800 or more than 800 messages on Slack on an internal channel debating Apple's plans to scan iPhones, iPads, and computers for these child abuse images. A backlash over Apple's move to scan U.S. consumer phones and computers for child sex abuse images has grown, including employees. And the article says, a notable turn in the company framed for its secretive culture, as well as provoking intensified protests from leading technology publicity groups. And this itself is kind of un-Apple-ish for somebody internally to leak this to the press that this is happening. No doubt that was happening. No,
the past 2 months have been unusual for Apple, right? All of the protests about coming back to work, the internal protests about hiring that, and I forget his name, the previous tweets. This is definitely un-Apple-like.
Yeah, our friend Sid works at Apple. I'm just going to ping him to see if he'll pop in here. But he might not even be awake yet. But
I think he's already in the room.
Oh, is he? I wonder if Sid can just comment just separately, just give people an understanding of Apple culture and how this is certainly un-Apple-ish about. What I think it is because people are working remotely from their own homes for the past several months. They are still chatting, and commuting with their colleagues, apparently via Slack. I thought that was kind of interesting. I didn't realize they use Slack. I'm kind of surprised by that, honestly. And that one of I would wager almost anything that whoever tipped off the press that they're debating internally through Slack about this whole child abuse image scanning drama, that that's a person that's been working from home, kind of detached from the office. Because if you're in the regular Apple culture of things and at the office every day, it's like Fort Knox. Like, stuff doesn't get out, and it really never has. I mean, you can count on one hand the number of times internalized stuff from Apple got out, and this would be one of those such examples. Like, Apple team members are not to do this stuff, and if they find out who did it, holy cow! I don't want to. I mean, this is so antithetical to what Apple's about. So clearly a disgruntled employee who's tipping off the press that this is even happening. It's kind of unprecedented. So anyway, that it is what it is, and they're debating it internally. No doubt that to me is a given. That's totally obvious that there's team members at Apple that are like, maybe we should rethink this. There's a lot of considerable blowback from a lot of folks. They got a signature collection of 5,500 security experts saying, please rethink this. And no doubt internally they're challenging this. What's more surprising is that somebody internally decided to leak it to a journalist. Reuters says they have the exclusive sources on this. So somebody leaked it to Reuters, specifically Joseph Men and Julia Love at Reuters. So they know who the mole is. But interesting to see that. And then New York Times says Apple has now sent a clear message that it is safe to build and use systems that directly scan people's personal phones for. Oh, that's an interesting hot take. Apple wants to protect children, but it's creating serious privacy risks, is the headline from the New York Times. So even they're kind of jumping on the point that the security experts are, that this is opening a can of worms, where they say Apple has now sent a clear message that it is safe to build and use systems that directly scan people's personal phones and for prohibited content. I guess Snowden's doing some more tweets where he says Apple is not doing this as part of a crusade to protect children, or they would not allow the scans to be bypassed by disabling iCloud photos. They are doing it to be seen to be doing something while minimizing their involvement. This hurts users and doesn't help children. Okay, next big headline at the moment is about Nvidia. So is Mengdu on stage? Because she works at Nvidia, or
No.
in the audience perhaps. Nvidia says part of its April keynote was led by a virtual replica of CEO Jensen Huang, created by scanning Huang and then training an AI to mimic his gestures. Nvidia pulled off a stunt to promote and showcase its latest technology by digitizing its CEO in a conference keynote. And indeed, I found and I'll tweet this out so you can see it, and you wouldn't know unless they revealed to you. They have a avatar generator that I saw yesterday, where it starts with a human face, and think of Photoshop, and it shows a kind of generic human face. In fact, it started with the example that I saw out, and somebody can try and find this. It started with Elon Musk's face as the default. And then there's a bunch of sliders on the right-hand side of the screen. And one of the sliders is gender. And so you can move Elon on the gender slider to become more feminine, all the way to like a very incredibly feminine and incredibly masculine. And then there was an age slider. So you could do full feminine, full age up, like old. So you can make a very old woman or a very young woman or a very old man or a very young man, starting with Elon Musk kind of at the center. And then there was other, weight, like the size of the individual, like the body fat BMI or slider. And then through 10 different sliders of, weight, age, sex, skin tone, like you could go from very, very dark to very, very light. Through these sliders, you could generate freaking anybody. It's really, and very, very easily, and very dramatically, and incredibly convincingly. I mean, and it's not just still photo. It's moving motion person who's moving their head, and they're controllable avatars, and that's why they had, as Nvidia is saying, they've now revealed that its CEO was computer generated in its keynote speech, and nobody knew, nobody even noticed, and they had to come out with a headline after the fact, and be like, hey, did you know that was a computer generated, virtual version of our CEO doing that keynote that you just watched? That's wild, because that means we start bringing back, our Bob Barker to do the showcase showdowns for The Price is Right. You can start bringing back,
a consensual deepfake, basically.
Yeah. Well, what about John Lennon or Bob Marley or what about the people who, or Elvis Presley, like their descendants who own the rights to their likeness or whatever might consent to it as well on their behalf. So
on the entertainment front, they've already brought Tupac back, and we had a headline here where Whitney Houston fans were like, let her
rest in peace.
Rest in peace. They're trying to bring Whitney back. So on the entertainment front, there are they're itching to do that on entertainers from the past.
Yeah. So I think I just tweeted this out. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, they're going as far as to even try and generate the holograms through some of the hologram companies that have come out to be able to take AI and not just create the avatar, but be able to create a live show with holograms of the old show. I don't know how they do it.
That's what they did with
shown.
Isn't that what they did with Tupac?
Showed a company. I think Tupac was mentioned somewhere. Yeah.
That for Coachella some years back, they brought Tupac back.
Okay, I thought it was street scene because I've been to like, that was my younger days, so I was like at both every year, and I can't remember where I saw it because I was so wasted.
Coachella.
Facebook should be that. Okay, so the I tweeted out the link to this Nvidia story, and you can watch the video and figure out where the person was virtual and not. It's has really interesting implications because you could have TV, hosts that if they look real enough now, you can't tell unless they decide to reveal it to you. You could even have heads of states. Joe Biden could be digitized and give the State of the Union in front of Congress, and if they do it in a live stream, you wouldn't know. You literally wouldn't know. And more importantly, the combination of GPT-4, which is just around the horizon, and the other kind of companion technologies of voice printing, where you record an hour of the person's voice and then you can synthetically reproduce that person's voice, and you really just won't know. And especially if you get all of their mannerisms and their speech patterns and their vocabulary as part of that, those technologies all exist. So you're just going to have insanely convincing deepfakes of anybody throughout history that you can get enough of the audio of their voice, and you don't need a lot. But the idea that anybody can be deepfaked or synthesized, both audio and video, is kind of mind-blowing. So,
Tyler, can
yes.
I just make a comment?
Yeah.
There is just a news here in Spain related a deepfake, like a TV announcement that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to regulate who has the right to resuscitate someone and do a deepfake, because in some way you are using, you can tell, like, public image, but in some way they were trying to regulate that in Spain.
Well, here's another interesting point. Yeah, that makes sense. Of course, it's going to become a legal powder keg, because what if people are, if you do in America, if you parody something, like if you make a Joe Biden deepfake, but you're lampooning it and making a joke of it, like they do on Saturday Night Live. They try and dress up as close as possible to Donald Trump as what was the actor who did all of the Donald Trumps on Saturday Night Live.
Baldwin, right?
Yes, Alec Baldwin.
Yeah,
and he did an incredibly funny one, and that's completely legal. Like, that's deeply ingrained in American law. You can lampoon celebrities. You can look, and there's been some cases historically, people that have done incredibly accurate portrayals of other celebrities on Saturday Night Live, and that's completely legal. Like, there's nothing you can do about that. So why should deepfakes be any different? If you're doing it in a lampooning kind of, what's the word that they say? The legal framework that gives people the right to do that is if
parody.
If you're making a parody.
But you are using the image. Sorry, you are using the image, the recorded image. For example, in the case of Spain, was
I'm rebuilding it from nothing myself with my hands. I started with a blank tablet, and just like if we do prosthetics, like plastic prosthetics, if you take, in the case of Saturday Night Live, and which I hope everyone's familiar with, where they make fun of politicians all the time, and in the case of Alec Baldwin, who has an interesting likeness to President Trump, and they try and make him look like President Trump, and if they committed themselves and got the best Hollywood plastic surgeon, to do the fake mask and everything, they could make him indistinguishable from President Trump, where he could walk down the street and people would think it was Trump. There's nothing illegal about that. And they could go on the biggest TV show in America. He looks exactly undistinguishable from President Trump. He could go up there and say, sing Mary Had a Little Lamb and say, I'm an idiot, 1,000 times over. And, I'm the worst president in history. That's completely, totally legal. And they made him look indistinguishable from the president. There's nothing even President Trump can do about that. let alone what Bill Cosby could do if you copied Bill Cosby, let alone what Britney Spears could do if you copied Britney Spears, physically with plastic, stuff glued to your face to look exactly like her. I don't see why digital would be any different if you're building the digital from the ground up. If you took a photo, right, and that photo, somebody owns that actual photo, and they could say, hey, that's my photo that you took, fair enough, but we're not using your photo. We built this with computer algorithms to design, like as an artist does, in Photoshop, to look exactly like Britney Spears. Is there really much difference between a person doing plastic adhesives on people's faces and masks and people doing that in a computer, which, by the way, those masks are built with computers anyways? It's just the physical version of what's in the computer anyways.
Taylor, isn't it kind of like the paparazzi? Like, they could take pictures, but you can't take pictures of random people on the street. Like, they can do it because they're an entertainment or a TV channel, but like random people cannot do that.
You can take any picture of any random person on the street if they're in public. That's why paparazzis can take pictures of people in public, but just not in private. There's the public interest element of celebrities, which is kind of a different case. The ability to photograph them and publish photographs isn't unique to.
It also depends on the jurisdiction, Tyler. I mean, not all the countries are the same, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It depends on where you are.
Right. But this is the point, is like, if this is done in America, say the EU says deep fakes are illegal, Saturday Night Live is going to be like, big whoop. We're not Europeans. We're doing this here in America. We put it on the internet. Up to you to stop your citizens from watching it.
But Tyler, I think we're even in the United States, where ultimately I think the law is going to get involved. There's no danger of Alec Baldwin, doing what he did with Trump. But if somebody does a deep fake of whoever the incumbent president is, and it's not clear that it's a parody, and it looks like he's giving the State of the Union, and he's talking about, hey, I'm going to launch an attack against this country. I mean, it could have really real world, repercussions. Ronald Reagan, people forget, Ronald Reagan, the real Ronald Reagan, did a radio show when he was president, and he was kind of joking around about like bombing Russia, and the Russians, they mobilized. They had their bombers in the air because they took it seriously.
Yep.
I mean, it could get very dangerous.
Well, so just on that note, and since Ken brought it up, and I'm not sure, Tyler, whether this is true or not, or how many companies have done it. I was in a pitch recently by a company that was looking at stopping deep fakes and authentication of true likenesses and true videos, et cetera, et cetera. And what they were telling me, I mean, they're happy to show me their own patent spending, but what they were telling me was that Twitter had filed a number of patents in relation to it. Is this somewhere out there in the news, or have we heard anything about it?
I haven't.
Okay. We may have something coming then.
Yeah. The other, I think of, like, it wouldn't need to be a notable figure like Sacha Baron Cohen pretending like he's the Prime Minister of Kazakhstan, for example. No one knows what the Prime Minister of Kazakhstan looks like. So somebody could make a deep fake that has a fake, isn't even the real name, of Uzbekistan. No American can find, Canada on a map, let alone Uzbekistan. So if you show, somebody claiming to be, the Prime Minister of Tajikistan, and with a fake name, with a fake any face, you're not actually impersonating anybody. It's just a face. And they say, yeah, we're going to launch missiles here or there. What happens then? You didn't actually claim to be an actual person that actually exists. You're just, it's nearly identical to the Orson Welles attack from Mars, the big radio scare that happened, in the 40s or whenever that was, where he got on the radio system claiming and made a fake news,
And didn't the radio industry or the FCC or somebody then adopt regulations so that wouldn't happen again?
I don't know. I imagine, because I don't think it's happened since. So, in the next headline, this one's from Bloomberg. In an internal memo, again, what's with people leaking out their company internal communications? This is dangerous stuff. If your company catches you, you're toast. They'll likely sue you for damages. In an internal memo, Amazon drops guidelines that claimed ownership rights to video games made by staff after work hours following criticism from developers. Let me read this again and explain. This is an American legal employee issue. Amazon drops guidelines that claimed ownership rights to video games made by staff after work hours following criticism from developers. A memo from Game Studios chief suggests rules were too broad. Company previously claimed rights to games made outside of work. And this is, I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but in the US, if you're working at a company and you use company resources, meaning the company issued laptop or you did it on company grounds in your office, if you're using any kind of company resources of any kind, anything you create is company property, intellectual property. So if you make a video game, the company owns that video game. And so what they're saying here is after kind of game developers who work at Amazon, Amazon drops this ruling that claimed ownership rights to video games made by Amazon staff members after work hours. The question is, what device did they make it on? Where did they make it? Because even if it's after your work hours, if you're doing it with company resources on their office with their computers, they have a bit of a, depending on how your contract is worded in your employee agreement, doesn't matter that you did it after your shift ended, quote unquote. You're using company.
So it was a part of their policy that they had to use Amazon technology. They had to use Amazon product to make it. That was
No. If you go home to your own computer, and you're no longer at work, and you're not using any company resources, and you're sitting at home, whatever you make should be your own intellectual property.
I know, but a part of their policy was also that they had to use Amazon product.
That's not possible to do that. They can't say you're not allowed to create anything without using our property.
No, I think, for example, if they're using AWS, instead of using the company account that's allocated to you, you have to use your own private account.
Don't do that. Okay. Don't do that. Yeah, don't be an informed individual. Don't do stupid things.
Yeah.
Don't drink arsenic. Don't hold loaded guns to your head. And don't use company resources to create stuff because the company will own it.
Use Google Cloud.
Use Google Cloud. If you're an Amazon employee, use Google Cloud. If you must use any kind of cloud, use an Apple laptop that has nothing to do with the company in any shape, way, or form, that has never entered the company's property premises. And
don't even check your company email on it.
Don't touch it to the company in any shape, way, or form, and then the company will never know.
But it's kind of the fear thing, right? If you scare an employee saying your video game will belong to us and you have to use the product, then they're more than bound to use the product.
But this happens
especially
a lot.
If they're Amazon.
That's like a company telling you, hey, Faraz, you're not allowed to eat food at home unless you buy it from Amazon. Got it?
I know, man.
Yeah.
This is Amazon. This is the Antichrist.
Yeah, but it does.
It's like you work in McDonald's, you better eat Burger King quietly.
Yeah, but my point is, like, they can try. I find it hard to believe they have a rule saying you're not allowed to eat any food that you didn't buy from Amazon. I mean, that's essentially what they're asking here. That's kind of absurd on face value. So the next there's a couple of people tweeting about this one. It says, very well done by Amazon's HR team on this one. It shouldn't have been like that, but it takes courage to reverse a bad policy. This is an example of striving to be Earth's best employer, which that's kind of their internal aspiration to be the world's best employer. Amazon Game Studios told staff today it's dropping the controversial policies for personal games. Previously, moonlighting staff would have to use Amazon software and stores and grant the company license to use any IP they created. They would have to use Amazon software and stores, and they were asking for that. And if you're stupid enough to do that, then you're going to lose your intellectual property. And then somebody jumps in to say moonlighting, meaning working after hours, is such a blurry thing for so many studios, to the point Glassdoor should have. It's particularly challenging if you are a game developer working at a game development company, and then you go home and you make a separate game at home on your own system, yeah, that's certainly gray area, because the company is going to be like, hey, we hired you to make games for us, and now you went home and made separate games for yourself. Any court in America is going to be like, well, did you do it on your own premises with your own hardware, with your own tools, or did you use company resources at all in any way? Then it belongs to the company. It's kind of actually not that difficult for a judge or a jury to make a clear ruling on that. Anyway, and their ability to try and force people to use Amazon's resources off of your own hours. Yeah, if you're dumb enough to do that. It's like that
pilot.
Yeah.
It's like that pilot, if you remember, the pilot that created the app for the crew, and then got screwed out of it.
Yeah, well, that's a bit different. I mean, he made that on his own resources, on his own time. That was never the issue.
But he still got screwed out of it.
He got screwed out of it because he presented it to the company. They took it and ran with it. And now they're using it and claiming they didn't steal it from him, which they clearly did. And he's going to get a shit ton of money out of them, by the way. Like, if that goes to a court case, which it will, a jury is going to give that guy tens of millions of dollars. This is probably best case scenario for him, that his boss stole his innovation.
I was going to say, yeah.
So this is if once you start to understand how America works, that guy is like already buying a new mansion, knowing that any American jury, Americans hate big corporates when it comes down to these big court cases. If you're ever in a court case between a huge American company like United Airlines versus some typical American who got screwed by their boss, United Airlines, any jury of Americans is going to give you the biggest payout they can possibly give you, to the fullest extent possible. They want to hurt the big corporate boss and take as much money as they can and give it to that person who, if they believe they were truly victimized. That's just how American legal system works. That's how Americans as jurors work. It's very different than in Europe and in Asia, even, where people feel more have different allegiances to different powers. But in America, the underdog is going to get their due in that court case in nearly every instance, if there's actual intellectual property theft like that.
There's no IP there. Tyler.
It won't matter.
There's no IP there.
That's fine. And there's no brains in American jurors either. That doesn't matter. You're saying American jurors are smart and they're going to make the right legal decision. They're not. They're going to make the emotional decision and be like, we don't care if there's IP there or not. Give the guy $100 million. Thank you. We're done. Bye-bye.
The lawyers will pick the jurors that will yield the best results to, and they play this like trading game where it's like, well, I don't like this guy because of this, and they're like, well, I don't like that person because of that, and they rig the jury and they get the least educated jury possible.
You're intentionally picking incredibly low IQ people to emotionally give the person the money. You're not worried about them following the actual law, when you're selecting the jury. This is a unique aspect of American legal system.
Yeah, the lawyers will ask questions like, have you ever been treated unfairly by an employer?
Exactly.
And they're like, yeah, my boss treated me like crap. He's like, you're on.
You're on the jury. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, but Tyler, if it's a really awful case, you could ask for a summary judgment.
Yes.
And if there's no basis in law, the judge might just grant you a summary judgment.
Correct.
You never see a jury. Yeah.
Correct. Which is what the defense will try and do, of course. Anyway, but non-Americans, America's a unique landscape, which is, there's really distinct differences from how things work in Europe. So anyway, the next biggest headline is Circle announces intention to become a bank fully regulated by the Federal Reserve, the OCC, and the FDIC, which could make USDC a de facto central bank digital currency. Crypto giant Circle has announced its intention to become a bank. And does somebody have, let's see, let me read this. Why it matters. We're still a very long way from it happening, but if it does, Circle's USDC stablecoin could become a de facto central bank digital currency, Circle's dream is to become a narrow bank, one that issues fractional reserve banking entirely. We need Donna for this one, I think. Is Donna in the room? We got to ping Donna. Let me
It's
try.
kind of they kind of want to they want to be regulated in a way where the Fed gets involved and lets them become the essentially new LIBOR for USDC.
I'm pinging Donna. Keep an eye out for Donna, please. Circle's dream is to become a narrow bank. Only banks can open accounts directly with the central bank, which credits them with pure money. In Circle's case, the depositors would be holders of USDC, and the collateral backup of the USDC would be the money on the deposit at the Fed, the federal bank. Circle would pocket for itself the interest that the Fed pays on bank reserves. If the dream were to become reality, then Circle would effectively be issuing a cryptocurrency backed by the Fed itself. For all intents and purposes, a central bank digital currency, or a CBDC. If Circle was allowed to do such a thing, then presumably other banks would be too, and they would rapidly start competing with each other to pass through most or all of the interest that the Fed pays on reserves. Buying those stablecoins would be tantamount to having money on deposit directly at the Fed. A would-be bank called TNB has tried to do narrow banking in the U.S. and has gotten nowhere. The Fed doesn't like the idea for reasons well glossed by Bloomberg's Matt Levine in 2019. Circle's chief strategy officer Dante Desparte tells Axios that the company hasn't yet even properly initiated the process of applying to become a bank. It's just announced its intention to do so. And he says they're willing to do whatever the policymakers want. The bottom line, most assets at most banks are loans that can, in theory, default. That's also true in Circle's assets right now. They're mostly commercial paper and other low-risk loans. Moving to a no-risk system would create a backdoor CBDC. It seemed unlikely the Fed would let that happen without being extremely deliberated about it. Okay.
But by the way, Tyler, there's a 1800s, circa 1800 federal law that precludes any that precludes this type of thing of like being a currency.
Yeah.
So I mean, you'd have to change federal law. It's not even just a question about applying to be a bank.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. America is understandably obsessed with and very keenly aware of the power of its currency, and won't let anybody meddle with it in any shape, way, or form.
If they're going to come with a CBDC, they're going to have to change federal law anyway, right? That's my understanding.
No, I mean
That's what I just said. Yeah, because there's a federal law that about what constitutes currency, and so all this stablecoin really can't be currency because the only legal currency is what the United States government authorizes.
Then they're changing it 100%. They're changing it because it's coming.
Well, what Tyler said
only
yesterday
if they wanted
is that what Tyler said yesterday in a news report is that there was no fractional reserve on that. The stable coin was just fixed. It wasn't like new central bank digital currency was going to be generated, that there was like a 1-to-1 tracking with a dollar, almost like what we did with gold before we entered all this. So there's not like a fiat on top of fiat is the thing.
Yeah, but the thing with these pegs, and and I did some rooms just the other day with Alexander on this, is pegs ultimately break, and it's like the Mexican peso crisis in 1994, where the Mexican government, I'm not even going to get into the weeds about how they did it, but they tried to peg the Mexican peso to the dollar, and for a while they were successful, and then they couldn't keep it up anymore, and they had to devalue. Okay, so you could try to do a peg, but it gets very very expensive. So you're right. You could do a peg, and that's not a currency. That's a peg. But almost every peg ultimately breaks.
Okay, Eugene, you had your hand up. Did you want to make a comment on this article?
Yeah, the key word in that article is dreams to become. They never going to happen, and especially there hasn't been a USDT or USDC equivalent that actually has sufficient funds to back itself up, which will be interesting if they even try to do the conversion. But it sounds like fake news,
or just clever PR. to get to get more free marketing for Circle, more visibility. So the next biggest headline at this moment is one of the big headlines last time we met, that the UK's competition authority, Competition and Markets Authority, which is called the CMA. So the UK's CMA, think of it as the FTC, I guess, says it has provisionally found that Facebook's app that they bought called Giphy, which is a standalone app that many people have on their phone to make GIFs, to respond to your friends rather than saying, you're crazy. You make a little funny, cute little video of a dog doing something crazy, and then you put over it, you're crazy, and you send that back as a GIF, right? So this GIFs have existed for a very long time, before Giphy ever existed. People have been sending GIFs through, even before Facebook, through email, right? And so Facebook bought this app called Giphy. Giphy, before it was bought by Facebook, did a very good job of partnering. They made a Giphy engine that makes it easier, makes it relatively easy to make GIFs. You can make them manually yourself. Lots of people do. And Giphy has lots of competitors, other little engines that make it also very easy to make GIFs. There's indeed dozens of GIF engines that makes it easy for people to make GIFs. Now, Giphy partnered with Facebook. They made it very easy to make GIFs inside of Facebook Messenger. They also partnered with Twitter and Snapchat and everybody else because they had a very good business development team and reached out to all the social networks and said, hey, we've made it really easy for people to make GIFs. How about we just give it for free inside of your social network? Cool, let's do it. Great. Giphy became the default GIF engine inside of many of the social apps. Now let me read the headline. The UK's competition watchdog, the CMA, says it has found that Facebook's Giphy acquisition could negatively impact competition, such as by denying competitors access to GIFs, meaning Facebook could, theoretically, prevent its competitors, like Snapchat and TikTok and Twitter, who also use the Giphy engine. Facebook could block the Giphy engine from working on now that they own it. Totally theoretical, not that they would really have any real strong reason to do this, but if they wanted to, they could keep Giphy, that engine that they bought, one of a dozen engines that they bought, they could keep it all for themselves. And then the worry is that as such would be denying competitors, TikTok, Twitter, Snapchat, access to GIFs, or the ability for their users to make GIFs. That's the headline. And the question is, even if Facebook were to say, you know what, we're going to keep the Giphy engine for ourselves on Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, and so Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok are going to have to find a new partnership with one of the other 24 Giphy engines who would, in a heartbeat, jump in there for free, just as Giphy did, in a heartbeat, in a New York minute. They would have that working over the weekend, guaranteed. So why is the UK's competition watchdog preemptively getting itself all wound up about something that's not likely to happen at all, and even if it did, could be resolvable in less than 24 hours? And by the way, there's a shortage of GIFs outside of Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, or places that don't have Giphy? There's GIFs happening all over the whole fucking internet that don't use Giphy. Are you telling me that GIFs will stop on Twitter if Facebook takes Giphy away from Twitter? You think people are going to not figure out how to make GIFs like they did for the decade before the Giphy engine existed? Can somebody help us understand what the fuck is this agency thinking?
People lazy, man.
The previously completed merger of social media giant Facebook and Giphy, the largest provider of GIFs and meme sharing services, has run into a potential roadblock from the UK's Competition and Markets Authority following an investigation The Competition Markets Authority has found that Facebook's 2020 takeover of Giphy would negatively impact competition between social media platforms. They would have an unfair advantage, potentially, if Facebook were to kind of keep Giphy, again, one of dozens of identical competitors, to themselves. They would then have an unfair advantage as a social network. That there would now be a lack of GIFs in the internet. What the fuck are you talking about? If the CMA competition concerns are ultimately confirmed, it would require Facebook to unwind the deal and sell off Giphy entirely. You have to sell Giphy because we're unnecessarily worried that you're going to block everyone else from using the Giphy engine. $400 million company that they paid for this. And you're going to have to sell it now. We know you bought it. We know that the team that sold it to you have all bought homes and the yachts, and they're done. They're sailing the Mediterranean with their family and friends. That's nice. You paid $400 million for it. Now you have to go sell it and find a new buyer for it. And what if Twitter bought it? And would they then tell Twitter, no, you have to sell it too, because now we're worried you're going to keep it for yourself? And what if TikTok buys it? No, TikTok, you can't buy it, because we're worried you're going to keep it for yourself and you're going to have an unfair advantage. What the fuck are you talking about? So who can own it? Who can own Giphy? Like Giphy, the one of, again, 24 GIF generating engines, which, by the way, you don't need a fucking GIF generating engine to make GIFs. You can do it the old fashioned way, as people did for a decade in Photoshop. So, are you telling me Giphy is so superior to the 24 other solutions on the market that it gives them an asymmetrical, unfair advantage that you're going to force them to sell it? And who can buy it? None of the other social networks, because then they would have are you saying Giphy is like the ultimate ICBM, and now you're the only nuclear state in the social media landscape? And everyone else has butter knives and you got a nuclear bomb? That you're telling me the Giphy engine is that superior to all of their 24 other competitors?
That was Tyler speaking?
Yeah.
Tyler, there's a story that's technically larger behind that. And it has to do with, some of you might know, with Facebook Pixel, right? It's not the Giphy that's at stake. The company doesn't make money per se. It's the content network and ability to track where those Giphies originated, where they're going, who touched them using the pixels in them, and the cost to replicate that infrastructure would be potentially harmful. And I'll give you an example. If other social networks all of a sudden don't have access to this tracking capability or to this data exchange capability. So it's their content network and not necessarily the Giphy engine that I think they're complaining about, that's going to cost way too much to replicate if somebody were to start from scratch. And it will surely inconvenience the government everywhere around the world, because all of a sudden Amazon's and Microsoft can't track you anymore because only Facebook can. So I think that's what they're trying to say, not the actual production of the Giphy.
Yeah, from the article it says. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Tyler. This
Hey,
is Michelle speaking.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to maybe clarify that there's no pixel in GIF, and that's not even one of the use case of the pixel. But when it comes to the tracking ability, every single app can block that ability. For instance, when you have that social sharing embedded button, it's not because it's embedded that we have that tracking ability. So what I want to say is that with all other tools because technically Giphy is embedded within, let's say, Twitter, but that doesn't give us the right to actually track Twitter users' behavior. So just kind of wanted to clarify that.
The serious competition concerns are we will now consult on our findings before completing our review. Should we conclude the merger is detrimental to the market and social media users, So that the point that they're worried about social media users, meaning you as the end user, means they're worried about your ability to make GIFs, because you as the user are unrelated to the point you raise here, Eugene, about the tracking and whatnot. If they're worried that this is detrimental to social media users, you as the user, well, maybe they mean they're worried about your data being shared potentially. If maybe that's what they mean.
Well, the data, the marketing dollars, right?
Uh-huh.
All the data they collected on you is all of a sudden limited to Facebook, and nobody can leverage it. So content delivery networks are inconvenience. Not the reason to have a party about it, but it's just, I don't think it's just the Giphy engine. And I can assure Michelle 150%, and there's articles in CVE about it, that Giphy contains tracking pixels and tracking signatures.
I also just want to confirm that I'm actually working on signals for Facebook, so I'm pretty aware of how we deploy that tracking across the board. Maybe there might be some tracking in it, but it's not pixel. But I'm happy to read those articles and maybe help clarify that further. And what I also wanted to say is that across family of apps, users know, and now Giphy is part of our family of apps, so users kind of know that there is certain element of their behavior that may be recorded, but there's also a feature or a possibility to opt out across all those products. So, and that also applies to Giphy.
So in their update that they put out, it says, for example, Facebook could require Giphy customers such as TikTok, Twitter, and Snapchat to provide more user data in order to access Giphy GIFs. Not that they do, not that they would, not that they have no evidence that they even plan to do that, but they could. Such actions could increase Facebook's market power, which is already significant, the CMA said in the statement. The CMA's analysis records that Facebook's platforms, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, account for over 70% of the time people spend on social media and are accessed at least once a month by 80% of internet users. With all due respect, that number is going down. TikTok has now been reported as the most downloaded app of 2021 or 2020. So we're talking about a company that's, in terms of market dominance, is already losing market share to other apps. I don't know. Anyway, well, you bring up a great point, Eugene, and thank you for doing that. That it isn't just the ability to make GIFs. I agree with you. I think they actually, and they're not doing a good job of explaining it. They're more worried about potential data powers through tracking and whatnot. I think you're totally right about that. I think they're not doing a good job of explaining that and why what their real concern is in this case. Giphy currently has no employees, revenues, or assets in the UK, meaning that the CMA has no jurisdiction over this deal at all. So what's going to happen when they say, hey, Facebook, you have to sell this? And Facebook says, who are you? Why should we even care what you think? You have no power to force us to do this. We are an American company. Giphy's an American company. You're a UK agency. Go pound sand. So why they even have an opinion about it is kind of comical. Anyway,
Tyler, excuse my ignorance. Can you just sum that up in one sentence as to the truth of why this is Eugene correct then?
The truth of what?
Of why the CMA is doing this? It's on the data.
We don't know. Why? Yeah, that's the real question.
What do we think?
Why is the CMA doing something that is even out of their jurisdiction? This is like Afghanistan telling Google, hey, Google, you can't do that. What? Why would we even care what you think? They don't. This is just really bizarre. They have no say in this matter. Why are they even expressing an opinion in something they know have zero power over? So
would it be applicable to UK residing users of Facebook in some weird draconian law somewhere? I don't know.
The question is, why are they willing to even come out and say this publicly? Why would they even concern themselves with this?
Is there a UK-based alternative?
There you go, Chris.
That they're protecting?
Right. Is there a UK? Is one of Giphy's competitor UK-based? Chris, you figured it out. There, as I mentioned, there's 24 alternatives to Giphy. I can almost guarantee you what's really driving this is one of Giphy's competitors who want to see Giphy's that got paid $400 million by Facebook. They would love to see that deal broken and would love to replace them in that deal, if at all possible. Because Giphy now is being used by all the social networks, all the competitors are butthurt, and I guarantee you there's a UK-based Giphy competitor. Probably their second or third biggest competitor is UK-based. Somebody in the audience can do the sleuthing on that. Almost guaranteed.
I think it's also a way to signal to other governments. I mean, particularly given the fact that the U.S. government's been, honing in on big tech. And so even though it's outside of the jurisdiction of the UK legal system, it's not outside of the US federal government. So I agree that there is likely a local competitor. And I think that, this is the season of, clamping down on big tech. And it could just be a way of saying, hey, have you thought about this particular aspect of Facebook? And I really like the data collection piece as well. So that's my hunch.
So there's here are the competitors. I just Googled the words Giphy alternative, and Google says instantly at the top of the screen, the 7 best Giphy alternatives are Tenor GIF, TENOR, IMGUR is IMGUR. That is a big one, and IMGUR HQ. Where are they based? San Francisco. Where's Tenor? Tenor.com is Tenor.
Let's try out GPT-3, Tyler.
So San Francisco. So the top 2 competitors, Tenor and Imgur, are both San Francisco. We need to look up EasyGIF, GIFBin, EasyGIF is spelled EZGIF, GIFBin, GIFBIN, ImagePlay, IMGPLAY, and GIFs.com, and GiphyCat, GFYCAT, and see if any of those are based in the UK. Okay. And then we can get an investigative journalist to phone them up and be like, hey, kind of interesting that the UK is trying to crack down on your competitor, Giphy. Maybe you have anything to do with that, and record that conversation and pipe it in here, and let's see what they say. So
just the last thing I want to add here, and I just want to highlight this comment. That's my own opinion, but I think the element of Giphy also having an advertising network is not to be neglected when it comes to the competition aspect, because they also had a display ad network, which means that technically Facebook could be taking part of that share of wallet. So I think that's probably another relevant avenue to explore as well.
Yeah, people are making a mockery of all of this on Twitter. For example, Chris Mattern, who's the co-founder of Button, says, yes, the serious business of regulating GIFs. And just there's a whole bunch of people cracking jokes, like quite comical that they feel the need to concern themselves with this during COVID, and like they don't have something better to be focused on. It's kind of funny. Anyway, Facebook delays its office reopenings in the US until January 2022. Facebook originally hoped for 50% office capacity by September and 100% by October. And company originally planned to have employees back. Yeah. So now January 2022, just everybody's doing that now. A look at community NFT projects like Pudgy Penguins, which have become a new kind of financial and social status symbol on the internet. Is this what the metaverse looks like? No, not at all. This is from the New York Times. Earlier this week, I got attacked by penguins, not real ones, and they're talking about Pudgy Penguins, which is clearly inspired by the CryptoPunks and the Stoner Cats, and they're barely innovating at all. They're just, it's kind of just regurgitative. The CryptoPunks were of such tremendous kind of success, and Ida in the audience, who I saw earlier today, has a CryptoPunk as their kind of icon here in Clubhouse. If you've never seen a CryptoPunk, it's an NFT based art piece, to call it that, and people are paying a lot of money for some of these original CryptoPunks because they were the originals, and it made so much money that it inspired a whole bunch of copycats, of which Pudgy Penguins is one and Stoner Cats is another, and there's now several of these clones trying to cash in on this trend of NFTs and making, 1,000, anywhere between 1,000 and 10,000 of these kind of generated little cute icons. You can think of them as kind of like the modern day version of Cabbage Patch dolls, actually, or Garbage Pail Kids, the trading cards. It's just the NFT version of that, although they're trading for millions of dollars instead of, tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars. And why the New York Times feels the need to popularize this Pudgy Penguins is beyond me. But they are. There they are. And Decrypt has a story about Pudgy Penguins NFT craze takes flight as daily volume tops $11 million in Ethereum. And indeed, people are paying for these little icons. Bored Ape was another one. Pudgy Penguins, CryptoPunks. It says, want to get a sense of which NFT collectible series are currently in hot demand? It's simple. Just check out the crypto Twitter. Amongst crypto industry luminaries and enthusiasts, you'll find the classic CryptoPunks as well as the more recent Bored Apes. And lately, you'll often find Pudgy Penguins. Pudgy Penguins hardly break the mold for Ethereum-based NFTs. There's 8,888 of them in total, each depicting a different cartoonish penguin assembled from an array of randomized traits. Some have glasses, some have mohawks, some have t-shirts or scarves. And now people are trading these like digital baseball cards, essentially, although again, they trade for way more money. Somebody bought a CryptoPunk for more than $100 million, $150 million yesterday for one of these digital trading cards.
I don't get this. Why would someone buy that thing?
I suspect that it's two friends trading money and getting themselves some PR, although there are gas fees involved in even doing the transaction. But maybe they're able to monetize the PR.
Yes.
Because you could buy a Michelangelo for $150 million.
I could still go for the 60 million Beeple trade, but this one I really don't get.
$150 million for a CryptoPunk, which it's a little peculiar. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. So the next biggest headline at this moment is okay. Reddit raises $410 million, led by Fidelity Investments, at a $10 billion valuation, up from a $6 billion valuation 6 months ago. So nearly doubling their valuation in the past 6 months. Although I can assure you, their traffic didn't double in volume in the past 6 months. So why would their valuation double in the last 6 months? It's a trick question. Anyone have an idea?
I have a little bit of insight.
Go ahead, Eugene. Yeah.
In the last, actually, 9 months, Reddit had a huge push for advertising revenue. They completely revamped their back-end advertising content bidding and delivery. And if you look at the macro level, that's the largest growing revenue they had in this time. And they're the first ones with full GDPR compliance for the advertising network out there. So I think those are key drivers because there's no other traffic or revenue that showed up on the doorstep.
Yeah, I think it's the opportunity of social commerce where communities all over the internet now can monetize by selling things in real time, as we're seeing buy buttons on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat and Facebook. And now that Shopify is making it possible for every social media platform to become an e-commerce platform, Reddit itself is going to become a shoppable e-commerce-ified experience. And
but if you put it in perspective, it's only 4 CryptoPunks.
I just wanted to say, because I actually stumbled upon a piece of news this week about Reddit, and yeah, I think the reason why is because they are now starting their new ad network that is going to be Reddit ad managed services on redditinc.com/advertising if anyone wants to become an advertiser on Reddit.
Yeah, they're also going to push big into video as well.
So what role is identity verification going to play on Reddit? Because, that's a platform that's kind of notorious for people with multiple alts and,
Yeah.
Sure, but from the advertising perspective, you also have to have an IO, so an insertion order. So you just, you sign a contract. So it's not like you can just buy programmatic ads without having an entity. So it's just, it's for them, it's a revenue channel. But I don't think individuals, unless they're a business, will be able to leverage that ad network.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next one. Go ahead.
It's basically the first rule of a recession is you never stop ad spending, right? So if there's businesses that are going to be allowed to ad spend, then the trade makes sense. 410 million, I think it was, that was pushed into Reddit.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much money that's left on the advertising table that they will be fine. They'll surely very quickly grow this because they have a very high DAU and a lot of time spent on site. So the view through for them will be very high. So I'm sure they're going to be fine growing that ad network.
Okay. Next big story is an update on the streaming battle as Disney Plus reported its quarterly growth. Subscribers reached 116 million. The market expected 114.5. So they had 1.5 million more subscribers than what Wall Street expected, which means stock goes up. ESPN Plus subscribers grew 75% since last year to 14.9 million, quite far behind Disney. Hulu grew 21% to 42 million. And that's the update on the video streaming wars. And then Airbnb just did their Q2 revenue report of $1.34 billion, up nearly 300% year over year. And up the gross booking value was up 320%, a net loss of $68 million. So Airbnb beat Wall Street expectations for revenue and bookings in the second quarter, but the company warned about expected volatility from the COVID Delta variant, as they very well should. And what is Airbnb's ticker? Anyone know? Airbnb ticker is, here we go.
I think it's BNB.
Yes, ABNB. And over the past 5 days, it's kind of flat. Over the last year, a bit down and kind of flat since for the past 5 months. It went down during COVID, and then it's kind of trending sideways. But an interesting one to watch nonetheless. So the next big headline is TikTok details upcoming protections for users aged 13 to 17, including turning in-app messages off by default and changes to their notifications such that folks, young folks, so as part of the new changes, TikTok will limit push notifications to teens. Under 15 years old won't receive push notifications after 9 p.m. And 16 and 17-year-olds won't receive push notifications after 10 p.m. because TikTok's worried about you getting enough sleep. If you can believe that. Do you believe that? If you believe that, you're a fucking idiot.
This is just bullshit.
So
this and all the other this and all the other sleep and bedtime stories are all bullshit.
You know what I wonder is with all of these so-called child protection features that the platforms are launching, I think that the bullseye will come when one of these platforms is able to verify the true age of the child. I mean, I know in the US, young adults, would go through all kinds of hoops to get a fake ID to go to the club. I'm sure that if someone is really 12, but they want to be able to send in-app messages, they'll they'll put in a different birth date. So it'd be really interesting to see, because I understand that with adults, there's some piloting with state IDs, but children don't have access to that. So I think that's the real question for me.
My
already
6-year-old can do this
exists.
today. She can do this today. You guys need to meet her. She can screw every app on the planet today. I'll
Absolutely.
leave it. Sorry.
So somebody named Matt Navarra says tech giants are scrambling to update their privacy rules for young users in order to comply with new regulations from the UK focused on teens' online privacy and well-being. And perhaps that's true.
There's just that gap in U.S. law because COPPA only covers children under 13, and that's like a 20-year-old law or 20-plus-year-old law at this point, and it's just a checkbox. So
part of the new, what I'm curious, they still would. TikTok's followers, Instagram, Google is announcing new. Okay, so here's another person. Hannah Murphy says TikTok follows Instagram and Google in announcing new kid safety protections. They've been cast as proactive moves, but come shortly after the UK Online Harms Bill legislation was published and as a flurry of child-focused US bills emerge. So now we know why they're all doing this simultaneously in the same 3-day period. We have TikTok, Instagram, Google, YouTube, all simultaneously in the past 3 days, all doing things they would never on their own do, that are totally 180 degrees diametrically opposite of anything they've ever done since their founding. Everything they've ever done is maximizing average viewer times at all costs. So the fact that they're self-imposing this preemptively, as this person, Hannah, correctly states, that it's now passed in the UK, and they apparently there are bills shaping up in the US to do the same. And so they're proactively figuring out what moves are we willing to tolerate and self-impose in an effort to shake off the ensuing hounds that are on our trail. And that seems like the most plausible explanation I've heard yet. So we will see. Researchers say algorithms like NarxCare, which I've never heard of, NARXCare, anyone heard of that, which are used to identify a patient's risk of misusing opioids, may be actually worsening the U.S. opioid crisis. A sweeping drug addiction risk algorithm has become central to how U.S. handles the opioid crisis and may only be making the crisis worse, according to Wired.
Yeah. Again, I come from this space. I'm not a doctor, but if I remember correctly, this computer program was basically recommending opioids every time. It was like, your finger hurts, recommend opium or opioids. You're a little sad. How about a little opioids?
Have you tried fentanyl for that? Yeah. You lost your cat. Have you tried fentanyl? So, yeah, that's unfortunate. So the next headline is a company called Xtalpi, XTALPI, which uses AI for drug discovery and development, raises $400 million. And the next article, in response to internal calls for reform, Alibaba says it will form a committee of 5 female executives to handle workplace sexual harassment and related issues. This story contains mention of sexual assault as a warning, and the South China Morning Post says Alibaba declares war on sexual harassment after rape allegation. So the next big article is DoorDash.
They set up a hotline as well. They've got a hotline going as well.
Okay. So. DoorDash reports Q2 revenue of $1.24 billion, up 84% since last year. Total orders of 345 million orders, up 69% year over year. And net loss of 102 million, and says fee caps in cities like New York and LA cost it 26 million. DoorDash booked a record number of orders in the second quarter, even as its revenue growth slowed from pandemic-induced highs. But great space to be in. And Lionel Messi's new contract with Paris Saint-Germain, where he's leaving Barcelona. Americans are like, who the hell's Messi? What is this thing called football you're talking about? All the Europeans know this guy named Lionel Messi. He's a footballer. He's a soccer player. For my American friends who've never heard of the sport. And anyway, he's one of the biggest stars in the sport you never heard of, called football. And he is a huge celebrity in Europe as such. And he's leaving his former team called Barcelona, and he's going over to Paris Saint-Germain. And as part of this trade, part of his payment is a large number of a cryptocurrency, a fan tokens from something called Socios, which if you follow tech news around the world from the beginning, that name might sound familiar because we had the CEO of Socios here in Clubhouse as part of my monthly fundraising event, where he was here pitching his startup, which is called Chiliz, Chiliz, which is all about cryptocurrencies for soccer fans, essentially, is how he's starting it. And while he'll go into other sports like UFC and others. And it allows fans to even start to have voting rights within the soccer team. And the soccer team, of course, can decide what voting rights those fans have by using their own team's coins. But it's almost like an alternative to having shares and voting rights in the company. It's kind of clever. But the fact that now that the players are starting to get some of these coins is really quite interesting. Where even the headline says, Socios lets holders vote on minor decisions. And now that the players have the coins, they get to vote as well. Kind of interesting. So the next article is Google says it banned location data company SafeGraph in early June, meaning apps using SafeGraph have to remove it. SafeGraph sells smartphone location data to essentially anyone. And we talked about this when we met 12 hours ago. You can click the title. We meet twice a day. And this is a really interesting story. Basically, there's a lot of apps that you think are free and you have downloaded for free, like little game apps and flashlight apps and learning apps and, Sudoku, whatever. And those apps aren't really free. They're tracking your geodata. And what they do is they partner with a company like this called SafeGraph, although there's many others. And SafeGraph reaches out to them and say, hey, do you have more than 1 million users? Oh, you do? Great. Could you please ask permission, make sure you get their geodata of where they are, and we will pay you for that data, and then we will resell that data. And they do this with hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of apps. And in aggregate, they have all of the geodata of everybody, and they're selling it. And there's really interesting use cases that Motherboard has been. They're a bunch of geek journalists, and they found that some bad actors are buying this data, and they're specifically buying the data of people who went to mosques in America, meaning Muslims, and they're tracking them and where they're going. And then it's worse than that, because when you buy this geodata, there are identity codes, essentially, which are supposed to be anonymous. However, there are directories separately where you can look up the names of the people who have that ID identifier code. So it's only anonymous temporarily until you go across the street and look it up in the directory. And then you can actually know the identities of all of these people who went into that mosque and where they go then henceforward. And now you know who they are. You know they were at the mosque. And now you watch where they go everywhere. You can start cyber stalking them, essentially. And this is Google now understands this. And now you understand why Google says it has banned this location data company SafeGraph from buying data from the little apps. And now you're going to see a lot of these little apps disappear because their main source of revenue has now been cut off. So there'll be a lot less free apps as a result of this, although they'll be replaced and they'll find other clever ways to monetize, as they always do. But it's a really interesting story that most people know nothing about. And kudos to Motherboard for bringing more visibility to it. And by the way, the New York Times itself bought some of this data to track people they were doing a story about. And then Motherboard, a separate a different publication, contacted the New York Times and said, hey, we're fellow journalists. You realize you're buying geodata that you really shouldn't be buying in doing your story about those individuals. But the fact that journalists are buying this geodata to track people they're writing stories about should give you a little indication that maybe people should start looking into this geodata stuff a little bit.
And then there was that Catholic priest or something with the grinder data, right?
Yeah. So a very high-ranking Catholic Church member in the U.S. got caught due to their geodata where it was found. They went into gay bars, and now he's resigned in shame and everything else. So again, it's like funny. Just so you're aware, you think, I'm not being tracked. Well, if you installed that little cute game, of tic-tac-toe, you're being tracked with your name and everything about you, even though that TikTok app never asked your name. Doesn't matter. They added an ID signifier. There's a whole databases of all the apps are sharing all their unique identifiers, and they're able to get you, because all it takes is one app that does know your name or details. They're in the database that is cross-referenceable with all the other apps. So I'm
not sure that this works like this, actually.
I'm sure that it does.
Well, if someone deletes their identifier, or device identifier, other than
there's 20 different identifiers that apps have. One is your IMEI of your actual physical device, which Apple issues. There's a dozen more.
Even just touching a server, your MAC address would be revealed instantly.
Yeah, well, MAC address, yes, and IMEI, yes, and IDFA.
Your IP address, for one, which for a lot of people is still
IP
accurate.
Changes.
There's dozens.
Not that accurate. Okay.
So the next article is from the Wall Street Journal, a look at efforts to shape federal rules for companies disclosing cyber attacks, with a group representing Alphabet and Amazon pushing for a 72-hour window. This is interesting. Companies and trade groups want at least 72 hours to report cyber attacks, because here's why. They get hacked all the time. They're getting constantly attacked. So if they were forced to reveal that they're being attacked, it would make them look like the sky is falling. If Google's being attacked 100 times simultaneously at all times, there are 100 hackers simultaneously hacking Google right now as we speak, and Amazon, and every big website on the internet, and every crypto startup, and every bank, and every big company is simultaneously being hacked all the time. So if it becomes a rule that when you're hacked, you have to publicly broadcast the fact that you were hacked, Google would have to every 10 minutes have to send out a tweet or something saying we're hacked again, we're hacked again, we're hacked again, we're hacked again every 10 minutes. So what they're asking for is, can we have a 72-hour window that allows us to address the hack? And if we are able to resolve the hack, then we don't have to notify everybody, because this is going to get really tiring very quickly if we're forced to reveal every time that we're hacked. So a look at the effort to shape federal rules for companies disclosing cyber attacks, with a group representing Google and Amazon pushing for a 72-hour window. So it says here, companies are pushing emerging proposals in the House and Senate offer competing visions for how businesses operating most U.S. critical infrastructure would feed information to the Cybersecurity and Information Infrastructure Security Agency, the ISA, which could then share it across the public and private sectors. Several businesses and trade associations have called for tightly defining the kind of hack covered by this legislation, because they don't want to report all of them. They only want to report the ones that are actually serious, because it would be absurd to report all of them, as well as a 72-hour period for reporting incidences instead of a 24-hour period on Senate bill proposes, according to people familiar. The last thing you want to be doing is providing incomplete information or incorrect information before you don't really know what's going on, said John Miller, Senior Vice President of Policy and General Counsel for the Information Technology Industry Council, which represents all of the big tech companies, a trade group supporting and reporting window of 72 hours. The group, which represents tech companies including Google, Amazon, Oracle, also wants liability protections for companies that report incidents and exemptions from the FIA, the Freedom of Information Act, requests about them. And anyway, we'll see how this shakes out. But yeah, understand that they don't want to have to report every time they're hacked, and they want to limit to very critical hacks that are of significant and of actual concern to actual users. And they're just arguing internally over how to shape this legislation so that it's not, causing more problems than it actually solves. So the next biggest headline is, as Substack expands abroad, writers say it needs local payment options and customer support in other languages. Some worry about legal support in hostile states. That's an interesting point. And my friend Jane from Hong Kong jumps in on Twitter about this one, saying at least one Substack reporter has already been subject to a state pressure as a result of their reporting, when she's no doubt referring to Hong Kong. And she... let's see here. I'm retweeting out her tweet right now. Substack Local does not provide legal defense for non-U.S. writers at the moment. If you plan to keep your governments accountable outside of the U.S., and you, meaning you're a journalist, exposing, corruption outside of the U.S., and you encounter legal pressure from that government, you're on your own. True. Yeah, just like on Twitter for the most part. At least one Substack reporter has already been subject to state pressure, which she's in Hong Kong. No doubt she's referring to a Substack journalist in Hong Kong, although she doesn't specifically state who it is because she doesn't want to get them in more trouble than they're already in, no doubt. So it's an interesting point. As Substack starts to internationalize, it's a journalistic platform, and it's a unique one because it's individuals working independently, making their own money on Substack. They've left the New York Times, they've left the Wall Street Journal to go independent on Substack, where they get paid. And if you're doing independent journalism, who's going to protect you? You don't have the powers and the attorneys of the New York Times to protect you from China or the CCP if you say something that pisses them off, which has already happened in Hong Kong on Substack. That's what Jane's saying, basically. So what happens when they come for you and arrest you? Who you gonna cry to? It's a really interesting point. And so they need, as the headline says, writers say they need local payment options in different currencies, of course, customer support in other languages. Obviously, not everyone speaks English around the planet who want to be journalists on Substack independently, and some worry about legal support in hostile states. Yes, you should worry. And you shouldn't even think of Substack as going to help you, just like Twitter is not going to help you either. So, it's not like when you join Substack, you're not joining, it's an independent platform. You're on your own. It's called being on your own. It's called being a responsible adult. That's part of being independent. So, next big story is Bloomberg says it has sources. These are always good articles when they start that way. That Sequoia, which they mean Sequoia Capital, which is absolutely one of the very top elite VC venture capital firms in the world, based out of Silicon Valley, although they do have teams in China and India, and now a very nascent team based out of London covering Europe. And Sequoia remains optimistic about China as the health sector, about a third of Sequoia's China's portfolio, has yet to become a focus of crackdowns. Yes. And if you understand China, a Sequoia team in China obviously understands China. They've been actually quite active there for quite a long time, and they understand China. And they were not surprised when China and the CCP cracked down on EdTech, just like Ray Dalio, one of the world's biggest hedge fund, was not surprised of what China is doing in China. Sequoia is not surprised what China is doing in China. The people who join us here every day are now not at all surprised at what China is doing in China. However, investors in America who get their information from Bloomberg and TechCrunch are utterly confused about what's going on in China, because Bloomberg and TechCrunch are utterly confused about what's happening in China, because they don't have friends on the ground telling them what's actually going on. And once you know what's actually going on, it all makes perfect sense. And Sequoia knows what's going on. Ray Dalio knows what's going on. We know what's going on. Investors in America don't. And that's why Bloomberg, who's the author of this article, is confused why Sequoia's not confused about what's happening in China, because Bloomberg themselves are confused. So Bloomberg wrote an article saying, we have sources that Sequoia remains optimistic about China. What's going on? What's happening? Why is Sequoia still optimistic about China? Well, let me help you out, Bloomberg. You're a bunch of fucking idiots. You don't know what's going on in China because you're stupid. Sequoia knows what's going on in China because they're on the ground in China, just like Ray Dalio, who's doing billion-dollar deals there. It's not really that complicated to figure out what's going on there. We know what's going on there here in Tech News Around the World. You don't. And that says a lot more about you than Sequoia. Ray Dalio also said he's also super optimistic about China. We are too. We're super excited to figure out what the CCP's next move is going to be. And we think we actually know what some of those moves are because we know what's really guiding their crackdowns. You don't, because you haven't figured out what's really driving their decision making. And that's why you're confused why Sequoia remains optimistic about China. But they should be. And they are. And we are too. And Ray Dalio is. And when you understand what the CCP is doing in China, you are optimistic about opportunities to invest in China. And when you don't know what the CCP is doing, you think it's random. You don't understand it. Why are they doing it? Anything could be next. No, not at all. Every move they're making is related to the declining birth rate. And that's why they're cracking down on the milk, the price of milk baby formula, which you never reported and you didn't factor that in. And why they're cracking down on housing prices, which is directly related to that, which is directly related to the ed tech. And why they're trying
wedding cost.
The cost of weddings, they're cracking down on, and you never bothered to report that because you fundamentally misunderstand completely, utterly what's actually happening there. And that's why you're confused and you feel like it's totally random. And that's why you think it's a ridiculous place to invest in. But once you understand the what's going on, people on the ground are incredibly excited. They're buying lots of stocks in sports companies. And by the way, they're also cracking down on video games, which you don't understand why they're cracking down on video games. But the state itself, and they're cracking down on how the algorithms, meaning TikTok and their version of Twitter, which are called Douyin and Weibo in China, the state came out and said, we need to adjust these algorithms to promote better content, not crap content, because their version of Twitter and TikTok are showing a lot of stupid celebrity crazed content. And the state says no more of that. We as a state are going to adjust your algorithms to show more culturally valuable content because your crap content and your video games are leading people to become stupid and isolated. Their own words. It's isolating people, the video game. So they're reducing video games to 1 hour a day because video games are isolating people, which is reducing the population. Everything they're doing is about improving the population rate. Bloomberg, the fact that you still don't understand this 2 weeks later means you're just fucking stupid, utterly dumb. You're embarrassing yourself at this point. Call up somebody in Beijing. They have over 1 billion people over there that would be happy to explain to you what's going on. Try Skype, whatever you get on Microsoft Teams. You must know somebody over there. I realize China kicked out all of your journalists. I understand that. As they did all of the Western journalists are now got removed from mainland China. I get that. I understand that. Your team members are no longer on the ground in mainland China. That's unfortunate. I sympathize. However, they must know somebody, anybody, who's still inside mainland China who can help you understand what's really going on. Please give them a call. Please stop embarrassing yourself with headlines like Sequoia remains optimistic about China. And Ray Dalio. I pity. It blows my mind to think what could be next from Bloomberg with this. Like, that's a story that Sequoia remains optimistic about China. Of course they are. So is anybody who understands what's going on over there. The fact that you don't speaks more about you than about Sequoia, you dumb fucks. Figure it out, make the phone call, understand it's about the birth rate, and then write a story saying, hey, we had it all wrong. Now we understand what's going on. Thank you, Bloomberg, for that ridiculous, utterly stupid headline. So next big,
Tyler,
yes.
Just on a serious note, and I know you're being serious, but sorry, just the way you tell the story makes me laugh all the time. You see, with Sequoia, there's no way in how China is going to let healthcare get away, and even digital health and everything around medtech and everything that Sequoia is plowed a lot of capital in. But what will happen is, I'm confident of it, Sequoia will get a phone call before any regulation comes, months before it, or maybe even weeks before it, or things will be kept on hold until Sequoia has the ability to move and make certain changes to policies, or the underlying companies are allowed certain loopholes, etc., prior to those policies taking effect. And that's just the way people on the ground are treated. That was just a comment I wanted to add in there.
So Vice says they've got internal documents from Amazon. And again, this is getting concerning that big employees at big tech companies, like we had the Apple article earlier today, somebody from Apple leaked news to Reuters, and Reuters says, we have an exclusive sources, some internal Apple team member leaked out information that internally on their Slack channel, there's now more than 800 messages about, they're debating internally about scanning people's photos. As obviously they were, but what's interesting is that information got out to the press. So here's another one. Vice says they have internal documents about Amazon. So somebody from Amazon leaked, although that's not surprising because you have a whole lot of not so happy Amazon team members, and they don't have the incredible legacy of privacy that Apple has. But Amazon plans to monitor keyboard strokes and mouse movements, which, by the way, that if you're a geek, you understand how important that is, because people can be identified by their keyboard strokes very accurately. You can be known who you are. Your bank knows it's you when you're using your keyboard. They can if they use Behaviosec from Sweden, by the way. That's a service they offer. It's incredibly accurate. And your mouse movements can tell who you are as well. Matter of fact, your mouse movement alone can tell your sex and age by how you use your mouse. Whether you believe that or not doesn't matter. That's the data. So, and your actual identity, who you are, can be determined by your keyboard strokes. Whether you believe that or not doesn't matter. That's the data. So the fact that Amazon plans to monitor keyboard strokes and mouse movements tells you, that's a security measure internally. And Amazon saying they're using this for their customer service staff members to stop bad workers or hackers from accessing customer data. So when a bad worker starts looking at customer data that they shouldn't be looking at, they'll now know who looked at that data. Because the problem is people are looking at data they shouldn't be looking at, team members or hackers or both. And now if a rogue worker, as this article says, tries to look at information they shouldn't be looking at, they'll now know exactly who did it because they're now tracking the keystrokes on the keyboard. I'm willing to bet they just signed a deal with Behaviosec to enable this. So, amazing use of technology. Next one is from VentureBeat, a company called Chronologic, a sales meeting booking service that uses AI to automatically send calendar invites on behalf of salespeople, raises $20 million. And Bloomberg says a study of 6,000 websites and 900 apps that host pirated movies and TV finds they make $1.3 billion a year from ads, including ads from Amazon, Facebook, and Google. And a look at how centralized social media platforms have made the creator economy corrosive for online workers and what can be done to remedy the issue. And this is a very popular blog post that went out by somebody named Legion. And Lean is a very clever young lady who correctly points out a really interesting comparison between the creator economy, which we're all now have the opportunity to participate on through all of the big social media platforms, where if you're an influencer on Pinterest or Instagram or Twitter or TikTok or whatever, you can now start monetizing and add buy buttons to all of the images and products inside of your images and videos and whatnot. And she correctly raises a red flag preemptively, because we're barely just getting into this. It really hasn't officially, the race hasn't fully begun yet. We're still stretching our legs in the parking lot before this whole creator economy marathon kicks off. But she wants to point out the comparison that the gig economy didn't really turn out the way that a lot of gigsters had hoped. And you see them trying to unionize now, and a lot of the Uber drivers and Lyft drivers and delivery people and the disgruntled guerrilla employees in Berlin, yada, 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 yada. That the companies essentially have too much power. The point she makes in her article, it's a brilliant article. I'm going to retweet it out now so that you can read it yourself, but I'm just going to summarize it for you. That basically the platforms have the power because they have the data. And she very correctly understands that it's all about whoever has the data has the power. And in this case, in the gig economy, the apps have the data. The delivery drivers do not. They have no data. The Uber driver has no data. They're not keeping any data at all. Uber is keeping all kinds of data. So they have an asymmetrical power advantage in that relationship. And her point is that in the creator economy, that the platforms, the social media platforms, will also have an asymmetrical data advantage. That Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, and whatnot will have all of the data. You as the creator won't have nearly as much data. And you could be, if you're removed from that platform, poof, you're gone. You're an influencer on Instagram. If they decide, to limit your visibility, you have no recourse. You don't own the audience you're selling to. Yes, of course. Obviously, that's true. I mean, it's obvious to me. It might not be obvious to the Instagram influencers until it's a little too late. And maybe it is, because there was a headline 2 days ago that the Instagram influencers are starting to freak out that their visibility is going down because Instagram's starting to prioritize content. I told you this was going to come, because as soon as let's use Instagram as an example, but this is an incredibly important point for everyone to digest, which is now that we're shifting from social media to e-commerceified social commerce, what they prioritize in their algorithms is not the photo of the most beautiful lady with the biggest hips that'll get the most hearts, because it's no longer about getting likes and followers. That's not what matters. That's not the currency anymore. The currency now is actual dollar bills, y'all. So what they're going to prioritize in their algorithm is what gets the most purchases of the shoes or the shirt or the hat or the, cooling, the water cooling device in the background or whatever. And so when they're prioritizing for dollars and not hearts, it's no longer about the beautiful lady with the biggest hips. It's about whoever's got the most clickable, purchasable shoes or bike or water cooler or whatever in the photo or in the video. And so those ladies with the big hips are now getting a half the traffic they used to, and they can't figure out why. And it's because the platform's changing from social media, hearts and likes and clicks, to a social commerce app like Amazon. The apps are becoming much more like Amazon. They are products. It's e-commerce. There's money to be made now. And whoever's got the best products to sell and is getting the most commissions, that's what's going to get optimized in the algorithms. Bye duck lips. So it's unfortunate you invested so much in your duck lips, but that's not what's going to sell bicycles on Instagram or whatever products end up selling the most and monetizing the most. And that's what you're going to want to optimize for. And go ahead and jump over here to Asia and watch what's optimizing and watch what people are selling. It is a lot of makeup. Makeup people are going to make a ton of money, but so are clothes is going to make a ton of money too. There's tons of clothes being sold. Kitchen stuff.
Pomegranates.
Fruit is huge, by the way. Fruit is huge. And farmers are going to make a killing. And so is kitchen utensils of all kinds. Like anything for your kitchen or even for your house, like the kind of equivalent of like the IKEA catalog, like all kinds of house goods, especially kitchen goods, are huge. Huge, huge, huge. So it's a whole new world. And by the way, we had a headline 24 hours ago that the Snapchat influencers are leaving and they're going to YouTube. Why is that? Because they said they're not making as much money on Snapchat as they used to. And their friends on Snapchat are. And so why do they know they're going to YouTube? Because some of those clever little kids are A/B testing. They're on both platforms simultaneously. And they realize, you know what? I'm making more money from YouTube than I did on Snapchat. So, hey, friends, let's all head over to YouTubeville. And why is YouTube able to monetize more than Snapchat? Because YouTube is owned by Google, which is the world's biggest digital ad network. And they bought YouTube, and they're able to leverage their existing, ad network infrastructure into YouTube and monetize that stuff. And they've been monetizing YouTube since 2009, when I became the very first monetized YouTube account. And so they've got a decade head start on TikTok and Snapchat and Twitter and everybody else. So yeah, creators have been monetizing there for a very long time. There's a lot of people making millions of dollars on YouTube. I mean, thousands of people making millions of dollars on YouTube. So they have a huge advantage in this social commerce thing. And these platforms who are going to play in social commerce need to understand it's a battle for the influencers and who's going to be in the best position to help them monetize, because they're going to go wherever they make the most money, which for the time being, YouTube's got a disproportionate asymmetrical advantage in that regard. And now Snapchat is losing their influencers, and that could have although Snapchat's going into AR big time, and intelligently so. So is Facebook. So it's going to be interesting to watch. By the way, here's the headline. It's still in the news. It's like 3 stories next. Snapchat creators. This is from CNBC, America's biggest financial news outlet. CNBC headline: Snapchat creators say they are leaving Snapchats after payments dried up after June 1, with some moving to YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. There you go. Snapchat's got to do a whole lot more ad networking, get more money to give to creators, not just a fund to wet their beak momentarily. You need an ongoing pipeline of advertisers who are willing to pay to be in, or start getting that e-commerce engine going right now, so that people can start monetizing their views and transition themselves from pointless influencers into actual e-commerce, e-commerce salespeople, for lack of a better word. And that's the headline. So yeah, they got to move. If they're not going to monetize on your platform, and other platforms are now starting to monetize, you better start monetizing one way or another, either through your ad network, which Snaps is not very strong, or relative to the others, or through the e-commerceification. You better put your pedal to the metal on e-commerceifying and putting buy buttons inside of Snapchat, because Instagram's already got that started. So the race is on. Here we come with the social commerce. But back to the previous story about Lee Jin's article about the creator economy, where it says a look at how centralized social media platforms have become the creator economy, corrosive for online workers, and what can be done to remedy the issue. And she's just making the big point that they're all falling into a bit of a trap, because even if you go over to YouTube, you don't own your audience. What if YouTube doesn't feature you in the algorithm and they don't like you and they demonetize you? Happens all the time. Well, then what do you do? Yeah, you're caught. You're on their plantation. You're not the boss. They're the boss. And how do you own your own? It's, to me, this is common sense, but I understand how it's not for lots of other folks. You need to, own your audience. So there's all kinds of very clever ways to do that, and the really clever marketers know exactly the importance of that and how to do that. So the next big story is MailChimp is exploring strategic options, including a sale at a $10 billion valuation. And Foxconn had 30% year-over-year growth. Twitter rolls out a new design of their web and app, and implementing its first proprietary font called Chirp, which is giving people headaches, apparently. And the attacker who stole $611 million from the Poly network has now returned about half of it, and is willing to return all of it as soon as he feels it's safe for them to manage it. So,
hey, Tyler, at the risk of getting yelled at,
yeah.
I see Amay and Vinay down there.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. And so, Amay, any update on the crypto world? I don't see Vinay. Raise your hand, Vinay. Yeah, raise your hand, Vinay. Okay.
Moldova, raise your hand.
Yeah, coming in hot from Moldova. So while they're joining on stage, I've now cherry-picked out all of the best top tweets over the past few hours, and here's some of them. Facebook Giphy, we covered that. Mahogany had this climate tech one from Scientific American. The headline reads, Paleo climate data raises alarm on historic nature and climate emergency. The new Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, the IPCC, uses data from our planet's distant past to better understand current warming. And it's a really interesting article from Scientific American I'm just sending out. Amazon just launched a new hub in Kentucky, what they call an air hub. They spent $1.5 billion on it to speed up deliveries across America. And it's an incredibly massive facility that will now handle millions of packages a day as they continue to optimize to keep up with all of these 10-minute delivery startups that are popping up everywhere, partnering with Shopify. So they got to stay competitive. And I clicked invite on stage, but I don't see that you joined the stage, so you might need to hop out and back in. And so just FYI. So the next article is what we think we know about metabolism may be wrong, according to the New York Times. A new study challenges assumptions about energy expenditure by people, including the idea that metabolism slows at middle age. So you can read that one. And then Evan sent in this one, that satellites can be surprisingly great option for IoT for networks that need to be cheap and low power. Consider outer space. And these are all being tweeted simultaneously to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW. And you can send in an article too by just finding any tweet and then adding our Twitter account to your tweet. Like Mafalda did. And she sent this one in from The Guardian that China is banning karaoke songs with quote unquote illegal content that endangers national security, which raises the question, what kind of karaoke song could endanger China's national security?
Twerking. Songs that involve
anything
twerking.
That involves twerking is clearly a threat to their national security. And so China's nearly 50,000 karaoke venues will be encouraged to provide healthy songs rather than those threatening territorial integrity or religious policies. And
I bet there will be microphones in all karaoke rooms.
Well, yeah, you can't do karaoke without a microphone, Cheryl. Everybody knows that.
No, I mean the surveillance microphone.
Come on,
you know what
Cheryl.
I'm talking about.
Lots of microphones, probably tens of microphones in those karaoke rooms.
Routed back
real
to
big
the,
ones
CCTV
with cables.
Data center.
Yeah, and they're going to hold. Your people are going to hold them right up to their faces and talk right into them, and it's.
Sadly, those are the most secure microphones on the planet.
Yes.
So Ken found this one about delivery wars. Over 100 Amazon delivery companies are banding together to form a new kind of challenger to UPS and FedEx. That's interesting. 100 Amazon delivery companies, because this is interesting. Amazon doesn't want to own the delivery drivers. They do this clever thing where they sign these exclusive deals with these companies to be exclusive drivers for Amazon. And so this article says the Front Door Collective is a new national delivery player launched by more than 100 Amazon delivery companies. It's called Front Door Collective, Front Door Collective. And each Front Door Collective franchisee will have the opportunity to obtain equity in the company. It's a coalition of more than 100 small delivery companies, mostly which deliver for Amazon. So the drivers are unionizing, essentially. Ken, you have a thought on this? This was your article. I'm Googling Front Door Collective. Ken, Earth to Ken, are you there? Ken Frankel. There's a whole bunch of former Amazon director joins new delivery company owned by drivers. Oh boy, this is 13 hours ago. Front Door Collective executives explain importance of franchised DSP network. Uh-oh, Amazon. Meet Penelope Register Shaw, the secret weapon in a new challenger to UPS and FedEx. When Amazon executives asked Penelope Shaw to scale a new kind of delivery program, the logistics veteran saw a chance to right some wrongs. It was 2016, and Amazon had just rolled out its first branded plane, an early sign of its nascent logistics empire. It was eager to reduce reliance on parcel carriers such as FedEx and UPS, which had struggled to deliver amid difficulty holiday shopping season. A major part of the solution was a new program where Amazon would contract with small delivery providers all over the country, dubbed Delivery Service Partners, DSPs. Following an early pilot in the US and UK, the Register Shaw, the lady we're talking about, came aboard in 2016 to improve delivery attendance, better predict future performance, and solidify the background check systems, then scale it fast. She was drawn to the opportunity to present a relatively unskilled relatively unskilled entrepreneurs, and then Business Insider is paywalling the rest of that article. But here's a Q&A with Front Door Collective executives explain the importance of franchise DSPs. Company partners with electric vehicle manufacturer Canoo. And in an interview, the chief strategy officer, Penny Register Shaw, who has decades of logistics experience at FedEx and Walmart and Amazon, says in this Q&A, there are 2 layers of benefits to our ecosystem. Anyway, I found an interview with her that I'm tweeting out now to the Tech News Twitter account. This is quite interesting.
Yeah. So Tyler, this is Vinay. This very similar thing is happening in India, and what's really, that the Flipkart and Amazon case that's gone to the Supreme Court, the competitive anti-competition policies and all of that. And what's interesting is all of these e-commerce platforms have loved the fact that their service providers and retailers have been very, very fragmented, and they've been the flat platform that brings them together and gets it out. But they've also been squeezing these people on pricing and margins and everything. So what's now happening is this trend of collectivism, collective bargaining, and them coming together to squeeze back on Amazon and the others. So it's going to get really interesting to see, because retailers have been complaining, and now logistics people, service providers, same things happening with the food delivery guys as well. The drivers are just independent contractors and who have been brought down more and more in terms of their price. So now they're also gathering together to squeeze back on these platforms. Mm-hmm. So aggregators are great, but they've loved the fragmentation. Yeah. People are consolidating. It's going to get interesting.
Yeah, the collective, which emerged from stealth today, Thursday, has hired small delivery companies through a franchise model, promising to unlock new revenue streams by contracting directly with retailers other than Amazon. Oh boy! Oh wow!
That makes sense. So that makes huge sense. Because what I was going to say, Tyler, is it's uncharacteristic for a company that's so long-term thinking like Amazon to give up that delivery, that last mile. But
have I not been ranting the last week about if you don't own the actual delivery to the actual door, you could get circumvented? Here it is for Amazon.
But they must be banking hard on the automation, right? So that's why they're willing to give up this asset, because for them, it's always been just a short-term stopgap for their long-term goal of automating the entire process.
So check this out. It says the 4 co-founders all deliver for Amazon, and 2 company executives are former Amazon executives. Indeed, she ran the whole delivery, the car. I hope this lady's got good life insurance. Holy shit. She was basically running all of the delivery for Amazon, and now she just left and unionized all of them and made a company out of them that they get equity in the company. Kind of genius, actually. And so our former Amazon executives who now plan to give small delivery companies stock and say in how the new company operates, because we've been reading headlines that they were wildly disgruntled. That Amazon had put cameras inside the cars. Remember all this? And they're saying they're getting fired unfairly. Remember all these headlines from 3 weeks ago?
Yes.
Yeah. So they were wildly disgruntled. Amazon had way too much power over them. They just up and unionized, and the head of Amazon left to do it. The head of Amazon.
And then if you zoom out a little bit, you mentioned Canoe's the partner of this company, and Rivian, isn't that the launch partner for Amazon?
So let me read the rest of it. This just came out today. In fact, when you Google the name of the company, Front Door Collective, I mean, there's nothing about them other than like the trademark. They just registered their trademark.
To be honest, from California, I would have thought it was a weed shop.
Right, but just the fact that when you Google them and the only thing you find is their trademark registration means this is brand new, hot off the press, happening right now. So it says the group hopes to compete with UPS and FedEx and says it has the capacity to deliver 1 million packages a day virtually anywhere in the U.S. with same day and next day service. Yeah, you were Amazon. You were Amazon's, exclusive delivery system previously. Yeah, we know what you can do. Essential skills as Amazon is forcing the wider logistics industry to perform delivery speed. Co-founder and CEO Dan Borgault, who also runs a company contracted to deliver Amazon packages, said he expected to expand capacity significantly before the peak shipping season kicks off in November. According to Nate Skiver, the founder of LPF Spend Management and former logistics manager at Gap, the size of Front Door Collective's operation is sufficient to meet the needs of major retailers to begin with. Yeah, no shit. They're Amazon. They just did a mutiny. And here it says, here's a quote, 1 million packages a day. That's quite a lot, he said, adding that FedEx and UPS each deliver about 20 million packages a day. Most of the companies that have joined the collective employ up to 120 drivers who drive between 20 and 60 routes per day for Amazon, as well as other logistics companies such as FedEx, LaserShip, OnTrack, and XPO Logistics. Joining the group will allow hundreds of small business owners to maintain their autonomy and gain the bargaining power of a national logistics player, the CEO said. Borgault said the interest in the collective was voracious. Indeed, everyone's going to join. Our ability to add partners and have those partners expand is only limited by our volume we can generate, he told Insider. Recruitment is led by Chief Development Officer and Amazon DSP Kelly Pickering. So it's basically the Amazon team members who were running this, their delivery logistics, just mutinied and made a new company and are opening it up for others to use. And it's a huge financial opportunity for them. The Front Door Collective will not compete directly with Amazon. And an Amazon spokesperson told Insider that DSPs can deliver for free to other companies. Is that what your contract says? That we can't prohibit you. We can't make you do an exclusive with Amazon. We can't prevent you from doing deliveries for other companies, but we can make it that other deliveries that you do must be free. That's an interesting clause in a contract. So the quote from Amazon spokesperson is, delivery systems, DSPs, can deliver for free to other companies.
I would milk that, Tyler, so hard, because then you have all that juicy data, not only of those other companies that you're doing the free packages, but you also have location data of Amazon's customers.
But they just have to figure out all they got to do is figure out another way to monetize the delivery. So the collective will compete for the rest of the packages in the e-commerce ecosystem, making it a direct competitor to the fast delivery space dominated by gig economy players like Shipt, DoorDash, Uber, and Instacart. But as speed becomes more important to retailers, the collective's national presence could become a serious concern for UPS and FedEx. Skiver said it could be just a year or two before these types of local delivery drivers can compete directly with the parcel giants for the last mile. Borgault left a job at Instacart in 2018, started a small delivery company called Front Door Partners, and joined Amazon's delivery service partner program. Amazon started the program 5 years ago as a way to reduce its reliance on UPS and FedEx. It offers entrepreneurs $10,000 grants to start their own small delivery business, rents them Amazon vans, and then hires them to carry the packages on the last leg of their journey. Amazon currently has 2,500 DSPs around the world, employing more than 150,000 drivers. Amazon said it partners can earn up to $300,000 in annual revenue, blah, 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 blah. Wild. This is big news in the delivery space, indeed. Thank you to whoever sent this in. I'm tweeting the rest of this article out. I told you, if you don't own you have to own the delivery, not subcontract it out as Amazon did, and then they got squeezed.
And then the last part is, how does this play into the whole social media or social commerce side of things, right? And then I can imagine social commerce is going to basically be a drop ship type model where these would be the fulfillment routes.
Yeah. So that was Ken who sent that one in. Ken, are you back yet? He fell fast asleep. So the next one is, what a great one that was. Xiaomi clones the iPad Pro for half the price. That's my boys right there. Xiaomi doing what Xiaomi does best. Xiaomi just became the world's biggest smartphone manufacturer last month. As Maria knows, Xiaomi makes insanely good products at unimaginably good prices, and they were basically just doing smartphones. They make phones like the iPhone, although they use Android, with equal specs at half the price. Kind of much as simple as that. However, they previously didn't have tablets, and now the big headline is Xiaomi clones the iPad Pro at half the price, $386 for the same specs. Cloning Apple is certainly a bad Xiaomi habit, but the company is also keeping its good habits, namely releasing decent hardware for low prices.
What software are they using for the iPad?
I guess Android.
I mean, OS.
What OS?
Android?
Let's see. Android.
So it's like the Samsung
Harmony or whatever, right?
No, that's specifically
that's Huawei.
So
okay,
it says Android tablets are totally coming back, right? Google has launched a few tablet apps lately after years of neglect. It gave talks at Google I/O on how to design tablet apps, and the Android 12 developer preview shows that the company is working on taskbar-like UI for big screen devices like tablets. Now, the world's most popular Android device manufacturer, Xiaomi, is releasing an Android tablet for the first time in 3 years. The Xiaomi Mi Pad 5 Pro seems just a little inspired by Apple's flagship tablet, the iPad Pro. Xiaomi regularly produces wild technology-packed designs, but at times it also falls back into its old ways of being an Apple clone manufacturer. This is one of those times. I love this journalist. Who is this? Ron Amadeo. You're right. The company's new tablet has an 11-inch, 120 hertz, 200 very beautiful LCD, same specs as the iPad Pro, and is relatively high-end with the Snapdragon 870 SoC system on a chip. And the base unit comes with 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, with an option for 8 gigs of RAM, blah, blah, blah. Wi-Fi 6 support, USB-C, a whopping 8 speakers, and an incredibly low price. Cloning Apple is certainly a bad Xiaomi habit, but the company is also keeping its good habits, namely releasing decent hardware at low prices. $386. Yeah, a third of the price of the iPad Pro, which I think is $999.
So Tyler, the Xiaomi you have in Thailand is Android. The one that I have from China is MIUI. MIUI. It sucks.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So Evan sends in a link about the buy now, pay later landscape, where you can see all the players in buy now, pay later, pioneered and popularized by Klarna in Stockholm, Sweden, and now the whole world has jumped on board. And boy, has this created an explosion of unicorns. I've not heard of a buy now, pay later company not becoming a unicorn. Holy cow, if there was ever a business model that panned out nicely. And then Vinay, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
CoinDCX becomes India's first crypto unicorn and becoming India's 22nd unicorn for the year 2021. Another day, another unicorn. Who's it going to be tomorrow, Vinay?
I can't tell you. I have an NDA with them, but you'll get the news out on Monday. But CoinDCX is interesting because it's the first crypto unicorn in India. It's in a space which the government is looking to regulate, and it's interesting that the VCs have put money in. And the lead VC for investment in this is Eduardo Saverin's Facebook co-founder.
Yep.
He's the lead investor in this company.
Smart dude.
So really interesting.
And tell us about this next headline that you just shared from Times of India about India's first 3D printed house with.
Yeah, I tweeted that out yesterday because we were having that conversation. So there's the Indian Institute of Technology in Chennai and Madras, along with other, is now testing, and they've successfully piloted a 3D printed house, which, if it goes fully, if the pilot just gets verified, then it'll be helping solve the housing problem in India. Very low cost, can be done in 2 months compared to a regular house, which takes something like 6 to 8 months or more, and at a lot lower cost.
Much lower cost, and you can do these cool rounded shapes that are not so easy to do with, like rounded corners. It's not easy to do rounded corners with bricks, typically. So you get this apple-like looking factor to the design. It's kind of cool. And then William, who normally is in the audience, has this cool one from Reuters about crypto fashion, why people pay real money for virtual clothes. People care what their avatars are wearing. The question is, will the digital clothes disintegrate like actual physical clothes do, or will they need washing? Can you wear the same digital clothes for 1,000 days in a row? The answer is yes. So it's a weird concept altogether. The niche crypto assets are also capturing the attention of some of the world's biggest fashion companies, keen to associate themselves with a new generation of gamers. So tweeting that one out from Reuters. Ranjit just shared this one from TechCrunch about WhatsApp and other social media platforms are restricted in Zambia amidst ongoing elections. Several users from Zambia have taken to Twitter, which isn't currently banned or being taken offline, informing the general public that WhatsApp has been restricted in the country amidst ongoing general elections. Why are they stopping the apps during the election?
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, Messi.
Yeah, I tweeted that one. I think it's just everywhere in Africa. Just they get kind of concerned, let's put it that way, because of misinformation, lies, fake news, and this and that getting propagated and amplified by Facebook and others, and that's the justification. And some of it is actually true, because you can see some of opposition people who don't like the current president, not specifically Ethiopia or Ghana or Zambia now, but if they feel like the incumbent is doing things that they don't like or things like that, they just come up with some made up story, and then other supporters will just keep on passing it to others and others. So false information just gets amplified too much on Facebook and stuff like that. So when they get to elections, they just sort of curve it or shut it down.
Okay,
that's what it is.
Okay. The next headlines from Dr. Fran, that people are arguing about the word metaverse, if that's actually going to be the word that will be used for the whole AR, VR world that we go into after smartphones. And speaking on that topic, Rec Room, which is this really cool, engaging VR chat app where people talk with each other in spaces in VR, is hosting its own VR Olympics. Users globally compete in 7 custom-made VR games to win gold medals like archery, dodgeball, laser tag, paintball, and etc. Kind of cool. Jason in the audience sent in this one about from Euronews, Paris to Berlin in an hour on this new kind of Hyperloop-looking tube train. And I just tweeted out, Cheryl, you had this one from Wired. The women flagged by the algorithm were 3 times as likely to develop cancer, while previous statistical techniques were no better than random. So there's apparently a new algorithm that can detect cancer preemptively before they develop it. That's wild. So that's it from Wired. I just tweeted that one out at TNATW. Scientists discover a mind-blowing link between gut health and age reversal. Researchers demonstrate in a mouse model that when older mice have the gut microbiota of younger mice, they display behavioral qualities of younger mice. So there might be a link to our act of aging and our gut biome. And Gen Z and millennials embrace VR and AR sales options. Gen Z and millennials are driving new consumer shopping trends. One survey shows they are less inclined to shop at online marketplaces for non-essential items, and they are more open to try on clothes using AR and VR technology. And an artificial neural networks modeled on real brains can perform cognitive tasks. So AIs can now start acting more naturally, doing simulated cognitive tasks through neural networks modeled on real brain structures. The study shows how the artificial intelligence networks based on human brain connectivity can perform cognitive tasks effectively. Robots are coming for the lawyers. What they mean is AIs, obviously. Bad for lawyers' salaries, good for people who need cheap legal help. And a lot of the law is data, and data can be structured, and structured data can be manipulated and mastered by AIs, just like any video game. So goodbye, lawyers. And new findings are on how ketamine prevents depression from Neuroscience News. A new study provides novel mechanism insights into how ketamine exerts its antidepressant effects for those with depression. Dragonfly mission to Titan announces big science goals. Among our solar system's many moons, Saturn's moon of Titan stands out. It's the only moon with a substantial atmosphere and liquid on the surface. It even might have oxygen. According to experts from the World Health Organization, COVID-19 patient 0 may have worked in a lab in Wuhan, China. And there's now been a second deep dive into the origins of COVID, done by the World Health Organization, where they went to Wuhan lab, and one of the people in that investigation it's a Danish gentleman, is saying that, it's possible that this came from the lab by accident. And now CNBC News is reporting on YouTube. You really have to see this video from CNBC that I'm tweeting out right now from Dr. Danish, where they have another World Health Organization team member and advisor saying publicly on CNBC that China, pre the investigation, said, okay, we'll allow another investigation. I'll let him say the words. Do I have time here? You really have to. Basically, they're saying publicly now that they only allowed this World Health Organization investigation to come in because they said you can only come in if your outcome is X, that we did nothing wrong. And you're not allowed to recommend any further investigations. You're not allowed to say we did anything wrong. And they pre-set up all the rules. And if you agree that you're going to find nothing wrong, then okay, you can come in and do an investigation. And now
there's an article.
The investigators are blowing the whistle, saying, "Yeah, China let us come in and do the investigation if we agreed to say that we couldn't find anything, and that there's no reason to do further investigations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And it's basically exploding in their face. Like China's trying to rig the game preemptively before they even come in, which raises the question: why is a country who has any sincere interest and more importantly, claiming they have nothing to fear? They claim it came from America, by the way. So why are they so concerned about enforcing in writing on paper that you're not allowed to come up? They're fixing the conclusion before the investigation. What's the point of doing the investigation? So the investigators are blowing the whistle now and saying, this is what China did. And we can only blow the whistle now that it's over. And by the way, we do think it came from the lab. Go fuck yourself, China. That's what we think of your contract. Yes, Cheryl?
There's an article from Nikkei Asia today to say that while rejecting a WHO request for a probe into the Wuhan virology lab for COVID's origin, China suggests a UN team look into a US Army institute instead. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, China's still insisting that it didn't come from Wuhan, it came from the US, and yet won't allow an investigation into Wuhan.
And the thing is like, I've been following this since the Hong Kong protests. That's how long I've been following this, weird virus in Hubei.
Quick comment.
And
Chris, one second. Is that this other WHO investigator on CNBC, on live TV, one of America's biggest TV shows, is saying the world must stand and insist that we actually have full unperturbed access, because they're not even giving them proper access.
But
and
the
they
word
just
on Reddit, and I know that's such a terrible word to say, is that they got paid off right after that. They donated like $20 million
no, that was the
to the
first
WHO,
investigation,
right?
and that's why we had to
Right?
do this. Yeah, there was a first
Oh, so you're
investigation.
talking about a second one?
This is the second one, just
Oh,
ended just
Jesus, I'm
now.
so sorry.
And the investigators on the second one that just ended just now, they're literally at the airport as we speak, are already saying this was rigged. They said we could not share any views that would hold them responsible in any kind of way, or they wouldn't have allowed us to do the investigation. So we agreed to it, and we went in, them thinking that, we can't say anything bad because we already agreed we were not going to say anything bad. And, we already agreed what our conclusion would be before we even started it. And now we've done it, and we're now telling you, blowing the whistle, saying what they forced us to agree to. And by the way, we think it did come from the lab.
This could cost a Security Council seat, and this might explain why we're around Taiwan.
Why are they
right
even
now.
allowed to be in the World Health Organization if they're going to behave this way with the World Health Organization's investigations?
And then it also explains the positioning of our Navy in the South China Sea.
Oh, thank you for raising that point. Here's the headline. French warship confirmed to have anchored off the west coast of Taiwan. So now the French have joined. So
no, this all goes back to Bretton Woods when Taiwan
I'm tweeting
got
it out
from the UN.
For anyone doubting, I just tweeted it to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW. The French Coast Guard administration confirmed French naval vessel off the coast of.
And this also explains why we don't care about Afghanistan. We need the troops.
So you now have France, Germany, Japan, America, UK, Australia, India, all with their navies in the South China Sea simultaneously. And China and Russia doing joint military drills on the coast of northeast China, not far from Taiwan.
And you have the armed populace of the United States literally killing themselves with the virus right now.
Anyway, I just tweeted out the video to CNBC. I just tweeted out that the France just joined the rest of the free world in the South China Sea. And what else do we got here? The Economist today comes out with a headline that Xi Jinping's assault on tech could change China's trajectory. That's a fun tongue twister. It is likely to prove self-defeating, according to The Economist. Let me tweet that out for everyone who might want to read that. And then we have our friend Florian just opened the tech inclusion news around the world, where we're going to head shortly after I read this last headline. Videos show Chinese officials locking people into their houses as Delta variant causes surge. And it's now spreading across 19 provinces, and now they're locking people in their homes again. And I can just tweeted the video of that to the Twitter account. Washington Post headline today is China's mental health system has long been inadequate. Can AI change that? Hundreds of Chinese apps have popped up promising to provide support for healing through chatbots, virtual reality, or other newfangled technologies. And then May has this one that China wants to patent decentralized blockchain. Good luck with that. There's a lot of prior art on that. Chinese government entity files U.S. patent application for blockchain-based DNS. The Chinese government wants to patent decentralized blockchains. Comical. And yeah, this look out for the YouTube one from Dr. Danish. According to expert from World Health Organization, COVID-19 patient 0 may have worked at the lab in Wuhan, China, is the headline. And watch the video where they're now crying out for kind of international exposure and attention around this. So good times. Thank you again for another headline-filled fun.
Tyler, hold on. Florent is still here. Florent, have you started your room?
I see him over there in the other room.
You see?
Yeah.
I still see his avatar shadow. Okay.
I see him over there. So we'll see you over there. It's called Tech Inclusion